What's the scariest story you heard a child tell about their imaginary friend? My oldest, when she was 4, she had an imaginary friend named Jack who lived under our back porch, and he liked to shove sticks down people's throats. I discouraged playtime with Jack. A+ parenting decision there. My son was 3 and always had a bunch of imaginary friends. The most frequently mentioned were Monkey Boy and the Cowboy. When my son was 2, he woke up one night screaming. I ran in his room, and he was terrified. He kept pointing at the corner and saying that Monkey Boy was bad. I ended up picking my son up and putting him in bed to sleep with me. The next time he was 3, and we were taking a walk with his younger sister in the stroller. I'm pushing the stroller and he's walking just behind me. He keeps saying, "Oh, stop it," or "Please stop." I keep looking behind me at him and see nothing. I stop and ask him what's hurting him. He says, "The cowboy is hurting me, mommy." I tell him that there is no cowboy by us. He says, "Yes there is. It's the cowboy in my head." Kids are creepy sometimes. There seems to be lots of monkey boys / men in this thread, like in Family Guy, you know. When my daughter was a toddler, she randomly started talking about a man named Don. She always described him the same way and didn't seem scared at all. Despite bringing him up every day, she didn't go to daycare, and we didn't know anyone named Don. Then one day she got completely freaked out. Wouldn't walk around the house alone in case she ran into Don. Wouldn't sleep in her own room. And would talk about how she hated him because he said mean words to her all the time. About a year into Mean Don, we bought a new house. Once we moved, she never spoke of him again. Did she tell you if he had small hands? This was before that Don was even in the picture. She's 7 now. My son had this imaginary friend, Ganga. She lived in the nearby pond. Had duck feet, hair all over her face, ate through a slit in her neck, and we were expecting her any minute for dinner. He was totally chill with this horrific monster idea, yet he had recurring nightmares about a puppy coming into his room. Kids are weird. I cast music from my phone to my TV when I play with my 3-year-old son. It shows the album art on the TV. We like looking at neat artwork. Once I left it on shuffle and some scary album art comes on. It's a neon skull in a cloak holding a severed hand with a spirit trapped in a crystal ball. Bliss out. Drug church if you want to see it. Not scary, but not something I expected a 3-year-old to be into. He loved it. We listen to it regularly. It's the spooky song. A while later, The Day Is My Enemy by The Prodigy starts playing. The art is a fox against a sunset background. He freaked the duck out. Absolutely lost his shit and the afternoon was ruined. I had never seen him that terrified and haven't since. Kids are weird. The skeleton art is clear, but kind of cartoonish. You can tell it's just a drawing. The fox picture is much more realistic, but kind of ambiguous. It looks like an animal, but it's kind of hard to tell exactly what at first glance. It's kind of posed, as if it's going to jump, and it's looking right at you. I get why your kid was freaked out. My youngest niece had an imaginary friend, and when my sister told me about it, she said ask her what she looks like. Okay, what's she look like? Apostrophe. Broken pieces. Apostrophe. Oh. Why is she broken, sweetie? Apostrophe. She fell from our tree. Nope. Sorry sis, you're on your own. Reminds me of one thing I apparently said once while driving by an abandoned house. Me, that man's sad. Dad, why is he sad? Me, because they put dirt on him. My cousin had an imaginary friend who she said used to live in the fireplace and was red and patchy, as if she was burnt. Apparently she was a little girl who wore funny clothes that looked like olden day clothes. Still spooks me out. Damn. Still better than a purple mommy, though. I just ran from the bathroom to the living room because I thought of goddamned purple mommy. My cousin was a few years younger than me, and he had an imaginary friend called Mookie. Mookie wasn't human, but some kind of alien/monster thing. Used to freak me out when I'd hear a noise behind me at my grandparents' house, and my cousin would calmly say, "It's only Mookie. He just wants to see you." Apostrophe. Haha. Mookie is the name of a famous clown I see when on holiday at the circus, so I can only see him and his sketches when reading this one. Nice breather from all the potential demons. A dusty, dilapidated corridor stretching into darkness. Away in the dark, but not too far away. comes a soft honking. So maybe not scary but definitely weird. When I was little I claimed to have an imaginary friend who had light brown hair and wore a nightgown, and she had stars for eyes. Well, my niece was living at my old childhood home and she told me that she has a friend who misses me, and she asked why I went away. When I asked who, she described my old imaginary friend. It was super spooky. Edit. I have been informed that this is scary. My apologies. I had a similar-ish situation. My mother told me that when I was younger, she heard me talking to someone, so she came to investigate. Nobody there. She asked who I was talking to. She said I perfectly described my late grandmother. Fair enough. She died when I was young, and my mother's grandmother, including her name, after never having met or seen a photo of her, she was supremely spooked out. Something similar happened to me and my nephew. He used to stare at the corner of his bedroom laughing. When asked what he was looking at, he'd say Papa is dancing. A couple years later we were looking through old photo albums and he pointed to a picture of my father that had died years before he was born. That's Papa who used to dance. After that, I've always kind of believed that there's some stuff kids can see that we can't. Still freaks me out thinking about it. My son stopped talking to his imaginary friend for months after my nephew, who was 15, took his own life. My son, who was not quite 5, was the apple of his eye. My nephew treated my son like a little brother, and since his mom watched my son while I worked, they spent tons of time together. I had simply told my son his cousin was sick from sadness and had died. I would remind him every time before we went to their house, so he wouldn't pester my sister about where he was. One day he said, "Mom, you keep saying he's not here anymore, but he is. He sits on my bed before I go to sleep and talks to me. He would not be dissuaded." This went on for months. He knew things we did not speak about around him that happened. My nephew's grandpa on his dad's side passed a few months later. That's when my son told me his cousin told him he wouldn't be able to visit anymore. He was going on a train with his grandpa, and they couldn't come back again. Last thing he told him was to never play with guns. They weren't safe. My nephew took his life with a handgun. Wigged me the hell out. This was actually quite heartwarming. I totally did not tear up. A kid said he didn't want to go to church because my invisible friend says he can't follow me in there. Now that's fucked up. His imaginary friend being Jewish shouldn't elicit that strong of a reaction. Him talking to me's lady, hosme's lady, the white lady with black eyes and long fingernails. Cue me searching for the nearest exorcist, and the long teeth. Ed starts swinging. My friend's kids used to wake up at night and tell us there is an old lady in their bedroom. Fucking best not be. Probably just purple mommy. Nothing to worry about. I love that purple mommy is following me throughout all of the stories I read on this thread. But also I hate that purple mommy is following me throughout all of the stories I read on this thread. My son was 2. He started to cry in the middle of the night and say an orange doggy was under his cot. This went on for at least a month. He would describe the orange doggy as having sharp teeth, stealing his dummies, and biting his lips and face until there was blood. He's 16 now and still remembers it vividly. Purple mommy. When my son was first learning to talk, he would tell us about something called purple mommy. It could be an imaginary friend, but these details are a little bit creepy. Here's a few of the purple mommy details. Purple mommy is all purple with long hair and bright all white eyes. At the time he mixed up purple with black, so he could have meant she was all black. Purple mommy picks him up at night and turns off the lights. We would often find my son out of his crib in the morning, which would mean him crawling over the railing and to the ground. At a time when he was barely walking. Definitely found the lights in his room off a few times too, even though he's terrified of the dark. Purple mommy needs a bandage because she has blood everywhere. Purple mommy has no smile, meaning a mouth. Purple mommy can take her head off. Purple mommy really doesn't like daddy. He told us all of this stuff for maybe a year or a little more. If we ever asked where she was, he'd always point to the same spot, a corner of the room behind his open closet door. He would also wake up crying almost every night during this time. Once, during a really rough night, my wife went to ask him what's wrong, and his answer was purple mommy won't let me sleep. My youngest sister, 4 at the time, had an imaginary friend named Paris Jeris. My dad had built her a small playhouse in our backyard where my mom could see and hear her while she was in the kitchen. My sister would have tea parties and such with her imaginary friend. One day mom heard her say, "Don't worry, as long as I'm alive they won't hurt you." She paused and said, "Well, if you do that then I can't help you. It's not nice to kill people." When my mom asked her what that was about, my sister said, "Sometimes I have to tell Paris to be a nice person or he can't visit anymore." We moved not too long afterwards and she didn't get a new playhouse. Most of my extended family live around the same area, so we have lots of gatherings. For the backstory, one of my uncles, let's call him Steve, lost a childhood friend when he was 7. Steve and his friend, let's call him Jack, were having a play date one afternoon and got a bit dirty in some mud. So Steve's mother gave Jack a pair of Steve's shoes to borrow. When Jack's father came to pick him up after the play date, they forgot to put back on Jack's shoes and Jack accidentally got into the car with the borrowed shoes still on. Tragically, the father and Jack got into a terrible car crash on the way home which killed 7-year-old Jack. The family had him buried in the shoes he had borrowed from Steve. I'm not sure why. Fast forward 30 years to a family gathering in 2010. My 6-year-old cousin Sarah is playing alone with toys in a quieter room of the house. My uncle Steve comes up to her and asks her what she is playing. Sarah responds saying that she is playing with a friend. Holding back a smile, Steve asks who her imaginary friend is. Sarah continues to play while saying that she is playing with his friend Jack and that he is sorry he forgot to give your shoes back. My uncle's jaw nearly dropped. He had not talked about Jack in years, let alone tell that story to a 6-year-old. No one had brought up Jack that day nor at any family gathering recently. Every time I remember this incident I get chills. Bit late to the party, but anyway, my mom used to tell me the story about my imaginary friend. Well, to start off, my mom used to come check on me in the morning and things would have been placed into my cot that baby me would have had no way of reaching to put them in myself. Then as I got to maybe 5 years old I complained of someone knocking on my bedroom door each night. Then came the story of my imaginary friend, a little girl that I would play with. My mom asked me describe her and I said she wore a long dress, had blonde ringlet hair and her eyes were rolled back in her head. Cue freaked out mom. She tried not to bring it up too much as she didn't want to encourage this friend to stick around. But a few months later we were sat in the front room when I started to cry. She asked me what was wrong and I told her that my friend was sat on her lap and that wasn't fair as I wanted to sit on her lap instead. She never forgave me for the mini heart attack that gave her. Eventually years go by and I have no recollection of said friend, but my mom would tell her story every so often. Bonus story. Years later when my eldest was old enough to start talking, she would frequently tell me about her other mom who would come to visit her in her dreams to make sure she was okay and to say she missed her. My daughter would tell me that sometimes she would want to go with her other mom to wherever she goes when she leaves. Fuck that. Edit. There's quite a few ghost stories from that house that happened well into my early 20s. I struggle to accept the supernatural, but there was a lot of stuff that happened that I just can't explain. Edit 2. Spoke to my daughter about other mom today and she has no recollection of her whatsoever. But something strange she said was, I think little sister is other mom. She came back to me, which is really odd as imposter bitch did stop visiting a few months before little one was conceived. You better tell her to avoid those button eyes. I have a younger relative who used to talk about her imaginary friend, Miss Mim. Miss Mim looks down on everyone, not because she's arrogant, but because she is always floating high up on the ceiling. Miss Mim is always wearing her favorite white dress and holding a big clear towel, a wedding dress and veil. Miss Mim's neck is always bent. Miss Mim cries a lot. Miss Mim hates our grandma. When we mentioned this to grandma, she told us she had a friend who hanged herself in her wedding dress after her groom left her at the altar. I asked that same relative if she remembers Miss Mim, but all she could recall was that weird crying she heard sometimes. Well, okay then. My eldest told me that his imaginary friend misses me and wishes he could have been with me longer than a month. I lost his big sister to SIDS a month after she was born the year before I had him. I'm sorry for your loss. Does that give you any kind of comfort? Or is it just creepy? It creeped me out, but I also kinda thought about how she's basically keeping an eye on her little brother, which made me feel some comfort. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.